Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, your number one source for income-oriented investing. So YieldMax did make a few announcements, a few changes to their distribution frequency. So, I had many comments and emails of people wanting my opinion on this and to cover this. So I figure since Jay already went on ROD's channel, by the way, I met this guy in New York, super cool guy. He covers a lot of income-oriented stuff mostly, and has Jay on and a lot of guests on their channel. So I highly recommend you subscribe to his channel as well. They have a lot of Q&As, a lot of interviews. But anyway, I figure I'm not going to invite Jay just to talk about the same thing, say the same thing. Let's listen in together the actual news, because I think that, obviously there's a distribution frequency changes on. So YMAX, YMAG is going to weekly distributions, but there's other things as well. One thing I think is even more important, which Jay talks about. So let's just listen in and get the rundown of what's been happening with YieldMax, and then we'll discuss it in detail.
Four things happened today. The first, and it's almost buried because of all the other news, is that SMCI, YieldMax SMCI, started trading today. We expect that one to be on the.
So SMCI, this is just the newest, latest and greatest single stock YieldMax ETF that was just launched. And by the way, it's on the super micro computer stock. So that's what he's basically talking about there.
Higher end of distribution rates. I think the implied volatility ranges between 90 and 100, at times even higher. So I think that one might be pretty interesting for your viewers. Okay, this was not an SMCI commercial, but I didn't want that news to get lost in all the other news. Okay, couple other things. The second thing that we'll talk about is that we've added the ability for us to use spreads. We've called them the opportunistic call spreads within the strategies for all single stock YieldMax. That we started trading that Friday. That got filed. So now that is live for all of the single stock tickers. So that's great. We'll talk about that in a minute. I actually think that's the biggest news, but I know it's not. But I think long term, that might be the most impactful for the funds.
Okay, so I feel like this is definitely the biggest news. So this is literally they're adding the ability on all the single stock YieldMax ETFs, which, YMAX, YMAG, that includes them, right? Because they hold 7 or they hold all of them. This is very, very significant. So they're adding the ability to do call spreads, opportunistic call spreads, on top of just writing covered calls. So this is an additional tool that the fund managers will have to probably increase the yield, maybe even more, or at least increase potentially the performance. So I think this is absolutely massive, fantastic news. Like Jay said, I have to agree with him. This is even more important news than YMAX, YMAG going to weekly distributions, as well as distribution schedule, which he's going to talk about right now.
The other news is two other things about moving to weekly distributions for YMAX and YMAG. That's, based on popular demand, right? We heard a lot of feedback from that. There's a lot of folks that were looking for that. We did the math. It doesn't really have a negative impact on the performance of the funds, and we'll dig into that in a minute. So we're going to move YMAX and YMAG to weekly distributions. Announced on a Wednesday, GoX on a Thursday, pay on a Friday is our general schedule. And then,
so that's another piece of big news, which I find is pretty significant. So because of the success of Roundhill, obviously QDTE, XDTE, and now RDTE, I guess there's been a lot of requests to move the YieldMax, also the YieldMax funds, to a weekly distribution payout. So if you, by the way, you go to news and you open the latest press release, this is where you get it. So basically for YMAX, which is my personal favorite YieldMax product because it's an all-in-one product. So in case you didn't know, YMAX is just basically all the single stock, excluding the short ones, all the single stock YieldMax ETFs are in their equal weight. YMAG is the Magnificent Seven, so there's 7 of them in there, obviously Microsoft, Apple, etc., etc. So these two in particular are going to have weekly distributions. As far as I heard, same exact cycle as QDTE, which means you go ex-dividend on the Wednesday and you get paid on a Friday. So this is due to popular demand. So if you have YMAG or YMAX, like I used to have, I think this is welcome news, especially if you have it on drip, because you're compounding weekly, and if you're living off of them, you're getting paid every week. Of course, again, I've already talked about this a million times. If funds have over 20% yield, they're not really ideal to live off of. You're gonna have to reinvest. My opinion, some of the income, if you're living off of it, you could still do it, just not ideal to pull everything out every single week. Now, another thing, and I guess that's the end of, and by the way, check out obviously they discuss more in detail about everything. I didn't actually go and look in the details about the call spreads. That's actually what I really want to look at or talk about in detail. But that's basically the 4 pieces of news. So you got a new YieldMax here. You got distribution frequency changes, and on top of YMAX and YMAG going to weekly, basically what they've done is for all the different YieldMax ETFs here, single stock ETFs, they put them in different groups, and what they're basically done is change the distribution frequency. So some of them, group A will pay out in 1 week of the month, group B will pay out in a different week of the month, group C, group D. So basically I already know why they're doing that. So it's basically so that if you own multiple of these single stock YieldMax ETFs in different groups, you get paid every week. That's basically, I'm sure, why they're doing it. Of course, if you get YMAX or YMAG, it's just going to be a weekly distribution. But in case you're more of a stock picker, a YieldMax stock picker, for example, and you want to get paid every week, but you don't want the YMAX, this is a strategy you could use. So you basically mix and match, or just get all of them. So you get a couple in group A, couple in group B, couple in group C, etc. So every week you'll get some sort of payment. So that's good news, I guess, if you're a stock picker and you want to get paid more often. So you'll get paid by different stocks every week by the single YieldMax stocks. But of course, you just get, my opinion, you might as well just get YMAX to get or YMAG, I guess, for the weekly distribution. So it doesn't look like Alti is going. Is Alti part? Let me just see here. Sorry, I didn't check this before. So Alti is not going to weekly, but it's in Group C. So yeah, very interesting. So I definitely agree with Jay. And maybe I should have listened to the part where he talks about it in the Q&A, but maybe you guys could listen to it. So the ability to do call spreads is, I think, is a fantastic way to get additional income and more opportunistic income as well. So for them to have the ability to that, this is a complete strategy addition. So I think that is definitely the biggest change, the biggest news, the welcome news. How much of an impact will it have? I know that's the $1 million question. We'll have to wait and see, guys. I really don't know. But I definitely think it's positive. And of course, if you own YMAX and YMAG and you want weekly distributions, it's positive as well. I actually like weekly distributions. I think the compounding is better, has a better compounding effect over time. So I definitely like that. So $1 million question now you probably have for me. Are you gonna reinstate or go back to YMAX? Are you gonna reintroduce YMAX in your retirement accounts? You guys know that lately what I've done is, for my account, I went all in on QDTE, which is a NASDAQ 100 index covered call ETF that uses 1-day options. And in my wife's account, I did the same thing, but there's still SVOL as a secondary position. And you guys know that eventually, like I always keep talking about, I will move my RIV position once it hits 55,000 into SVOL. So I'll have a $100,000 investment in QDTE, a $80,000 investment in SVOL in my wife's account, and just all in a $180,000 investment in QDTE, and everything is on drip. So the $1 million question, are you thinking of maybe switching? Well, listen, guys, I still like QDTE a lot. Yes, YMAX is switching to weekly distributions, which is the YieldMax all-in-one. I really like YMAX as well. But one of the reasons I did switch is because the main reason, and this is still the case, I do prefer an index-based product. This is more of a equal weight stock picking product. So I still feel more comfortable. I like the idea of having the NASDAQ 100 index versus YMAX even though most of the stocks or a lot of the stocks, YMAX is kind of becoming almost like a NASDAQ 100 index, right? But it is equal weight, whereas QDTE is your classic exposure where, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, the bigger the company is, the more it's market cap weighted, whereas YMAX is equal weighted. Now, I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying that's what I prefer. Also, YMAX does have a little bit of a higher fee because they added 29 basis points. So the total fee is 1.28 versus 0.95 QDTE. But YMAX, I think, is still a great fund, guys, to consider. And maybe there is a possibility I'll reintroduce it in my wife's RSP account. Maybe I'll do a half SVOL, 40K SVOL, 40K YMAX, because it's pretty interesting if you just do a comparison. Total return comparison with dividends reinvested, YMAX versus QDTE. QDTE is outperforming, right? So I'm definitely not going to sell QDTE off to invest in YMAX, but to maybe switch a little bit of SVOL into YMAX could be a good idea, because if you actually look at the total return comparisons, YMAX is outperforming SVOL, guys. So I've been getting some people email me, not by a lot, but it is outperforming SVOL. So I've been getting emails and some concerns about people who have YMAX. And again, YMAX, very, very, very high yield. You got to expect a declining stock price, but look at the total returns instead. This basically is comparing YMAX versus SVOL. This is not a year of data, but it's almost a year since it's starting with the same start date. Remember, when you compare to ETFs, you always have to use the same start date here. That's why I really like this tool. It uses the start date of the later fund. So you see here, YMAX versus SVOL starting and ending at the same time. Basically, if you would have bought YMAX and put it on drip versus SVOL, put it on drip starting in January 17 till now, you would have been a little bit better off with YMAX. So YMAX is performing well, it's performing fine, guys. Will it continue to beat SVOL? I don't know. I'm going to keep my eye on it. But again, just like the video that came out where I talked about, that I do changes, things could change, guys. What if a leveraged version, a 25% leverage YMAX comes out? That would be very, very, very interesting. And maybe I would definitely, it's possible I would swap out all my SVOL, even though I love it, to YMAX, because I know I would probably get better returns over time because I'm dripping, especially now with the weekly compounding effect. So guys, you got to have an open mind about this. We got to take it easy, track everything, look at the results, and then you got to make a decision based on your goals, on your preference, on your personality. Are you living off of it? Are you not living off of it? Are you dripping? You're not dripping? So these are all important questions. Just because I do something or decide to do something for my portfolio doesn't mean you should copy me. You really got to figure out, understand, look at all the data, put everything together, and then make a decision. So I'm just pointing things out to you on how I feel about this YieldMax change. I think it's a positive change. The YMAX and YMAG to weekly, I think, is positive due to popular demand. It's obviously because of QDTE Roundhill success. I also think that YMAX is still a fantastic fund to consider, kind of like an alternative position in your account. I'm definitely gonna consider it more now, because imagine throughout the months that additional strategy with those the call spreads, maybe it's gonna help the performance. And I'm going to keep an eye on it, because if after another 6 months, after a year, 2 years, it's outperforming SVOL and it's pulling away, it's actually doing better, maybe I'll swap my SVOL into YMAX again, guys. I'm not sure. So you always got to keep an open mind and be open to changes and to make modifications to your portfolio. And maybe another fund's going to come out. A leveraged version of SVOL is going to come out. I don't know. This is why I love capitalism, because all these fund managers are competing for your money. So they're always trying to one-up each other. This is a good thing for us. I know many of you are overwhelmed by all the changes, but stay subscribed to this channel, because this is your #1 source for income-oriented investing, right? So Check out the full video if you want in detail. I'm assuming in there somewhere he's going to talk about the benefits call spreads could have. I think this could have additional yield, maybe additional total return. That would be my guess. But that's it for the YieldMax changes. So hopefully this was informative for you. Give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. I know many of you forget to do that. See you next time.